as we transition to the keynote and the presentation by our new chancellor, that I am really, really excited that Dr. Jannett Jackson is back. She is new to us as a chancellor, but I worked with her for many years as an administrator at Laney and COA. And in my interactions with her so far, I am absolutely convinced that Peralta is incredibly fortunate to have her, that she comes with strong knowledge about our district, our board, our faculty, our multi-college district. She comes with amazing expertise and experience throughout her career. When I first had my check-in with her, I said, is it all right, Chancellor Jackson, if I call you Dr. J? Because many people who have worked with her in the past got used to calling her Dr. J. And I'm thrilled that she's really understands and supports the meaning of professional development for faculty, for classified professionals, and for administrators. So with that, Dr. J, if you're ready, I would love to turn it over to you.
I need to share my screen, so I'm going to try, but you may have to give me some privileges or something, enable me to do that. So let me just try. And by the way, I did not pay Ingrid or promise her any additional staff development funds for making that unabated, unasked for acknowledgement. I really do appreciate that. So can people see my screen? And I'm also going to try to get my video on. I was trying to save it until I actually started, because I'm in Texas. So we have the saying in Texas is, if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes and it will change. So can everybody see my screen? Just a thumbs up if you can see my screen or not. So I am going to get started with my presentation, because I do want to make sure that there's some time for you to ask questions, because I think that's really important, is the questions. And I'm going to just give you kind of a, if you would call it, a state of the state of where we are right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about return to campus. I'm going to talk about the budget, some of the preparations, our ACC-JC follow-up report, the grand jury report, where we are with negotiations, and then kind of end it and open it up for questions. So I tested this out and it worked. So now I want to make sure that it actually goes through. So if any of you have read some of the announcements that I've sent out, I always, I'm a very spiritual person. And so I believe that things happen for a reason. So I had this book, I bought it years ago, and it was just on the bookshelf. And for some reason, I was looking for a book to read, and I saw it again. And I thought, let me this is kind of important, because I think women are strong and we're coming into our own right now, finally. But one of the things, and I took this directly from her book, it says, ancient dissectionists spoke of the auditory nerve being divided into 3 parts of the deep brain. And they surmised from that there were 3 different levels of listening. The first was the mundane conversations of the world. And I'm sure all of you have experienced that, where you just tune it out. It's there, people are talking, but we kind of tune that out. She said that the second level is apprehend learning and art. And you will hear people say, oh, they're a great musician, and musicians have a different part of the brain that they access. So that's that second kind of level of listening. And then the third pathway exists so that, and I will read it, I don't do a lot of that, but it says the third pathway existed so the soul itself might hear guidance and gain knowledge while here on earth. So I ask you, as we go through this next year, don't always just listen at the first level, the mundane, and you dismiss it. Don't always move to the second level where you're learning and you understand and you're into the art and music and dance and all of that. But when we get together and we're talking and discussing really important issues, to kind of go to that third level and listen so that you can get guidance and gain knowledge while you're here on earth. So when I sent out my message to the campus, again, I think things happen for a reason. I even said that in this particular missive that I sent out to everyone, is Ubuntu. And Ubuntu means I am because we are. And I was on the web. I don't even know what I was researching. And this popped up on my screen. And I thought, wow, what a powerful image. Let me read what this is talking about. And I'll just kind of briefly go through it for those of you that haven't, because, some of you have literally, because you're on vacation, you don't have to pay attention to all the things that are going on here. Enjoy your vacation. But if you haven't had a chance to read it, please do so, because it kind of illustrates what I want for us to accomplish while I'm here amongst you during this time and during this space. And I think we have an incredible opportunity to re-establish our rightful place within this region because we've done that before. So there's a great quote in there from Desmond Tutu. And again, I won't read that to you, but the picture is a picture of some young men in this village. There was an anthropologist who was there, and she was doing some investigative field work. And she really fell in love with the village, with the people, with the tribe, and especially the students, the young people. So when she was getting ready to leave, she said, I'm going to gather up all my different, sweets and goodies and cookies and put them all in a bag. And I have dogs and I'm working from home. So if you hear them, I apologize. Like I've got an office at home. So what she found is that when she put all the kids together, she put the bag under a tree and she, went out a few feet and said, okay, on your mark, get set, go. I want you to run as fast as you can. And the person that runs the fastest will get all of the goodies. And when she said that, to her surprise, she found the students didn't run for the goodies. They locked arms and they walked towards the tree. And when they got to the tree, they sat down in a circle, which you're looking at right now. And she was surprised. She said, well, why did you guys run? The person that was the fastest would have got all of the treats. And they said, a little girl looked up at her and said, how can one of us be happy if all of us are not happy? And in that moment was the experience of Ubuntu. So I talk about that in my message to you, my welcome message, and I would recommend that you read that because I think it's an important lesson. And for those of you that don't know me, I like to create a mental image because I think that sometimes that is much better than just words. I also try to acknowledge themes that I think we can wrap our head around and everybody can say, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. So one of those that I have adopted for my time here amongst you is Back to the Future. And it's now getting a resurgence there. The movie has come back out again, but it was really unique when I was growing up. And it just hit me one day because we would be talking and I would say, but I don't remember it being like that. And they said, well, it's like that now, Dr. J, and I said, well, we need to go back to that time. We need to go back to the past and recapture what is good in order for us to go forward. So that you will hear me say that again, Back to the Future, because I absolutely believe that. We know what right looks like. We know what is good for our students. We know what is good for us. And so with that, I worked with the board when they had their retreat and worked with Dr. Helen Benjamin, who was also part of that, to come up with some ground rules. And again, they're not earth shattering. They're things you probably heard before, but I would like to share them with you because I think as we go forward, we're not going to always agree. That's okay. You know, it's okay to disagree. Sometimes because of conflict, we get to a better place, but don't attack the person, attack the issue. And I used to always use that with an old friend of mine who I'm not even sure is still around, Bob Grill. He was the Academic Senate President at College of Alameda when I was there. And those of you that know Bob know that he can be very gruff. He can be very in your face. And I said, Bob, we can agree to disagree, but don't attack me. You know, I'm not a bad person. We just have different points of view. So these are kind of like the ground rules that I've established with the board, and I show them to you also, because I have some ongoing meetings that I've established. Jennifer and I are going to be meeting. District Academic Senate is going to be part of that. I'll probably be attending some of the planning budget meetings, and we're not always going to agree on everything, but listen as an ally, listen and engage. We're not opponents. Let's listen and maybe learn and plan effectively for the district. I think we all have that as our goal, is to be an effective district. Recognize and respect that people are in different places and have a right to their opinion and their perspective. Look for opportunities in your conversations where you can join the other person, not judge them. Be curious. Try to say, well, why do you think that way? And maybe you will change your position, maybe they'll change their position, but be curious and then be fully present. I think in our culture, it's not true in other cultures as I've traveled around the world, but in our particular culture, if you're not doing 2 or 3 things at the same time, people think I'm not productive. You know, I got to multitask. That's kind of, people accept that. But I ask that when you're having discussions that mean things, that are important, that you don't text, you don't use your phone, you don't check your emails, and you don't split your brain into segments, and be fully present at the moment. So those are kind of the ground rules that I think are important, and I'd like to share with you. And then for those of you, again, that know me, know that I have a military background, and I think we can do this. This is I think it's a poster that came out of World War II, when a lot of men were being drafted and went into the war, and women had to stay on the home front. And at that time, women were housewives. And that was really, you know, they opened up that box, and we haven't gone back into that ever again. But we can do this. We're strong, we're resilient. And as long as we work together, I know that we can achieve great things within this district. And so I'm going to talk about some of those things that aren't so nice, but I also wanted you to know that I believe in you. I believe in this district. I would not have come back off of retirement. No amount of money is worth that, you know, your peace of mind. I came because I believe in this district, and I believe that it was the right thing for me to do. So I want to talk a little bit about some of, and that's why I'm going through this, because I want to have some time for you to ask questions about it. So special reports, we've had a lot of them. I'm just going to talk about a few of them, but we've had a lot of reports, primarily ACCJC, the FITMAT report, the civil grand jury that we just got this year. So I just want to give you kind of a chronology so you can get a visual of all of the reports that we've had. We were taken off a warning. The last time was in 2018. Then we had to do a midterm report. That was in June. Okay. Then we had to do a finance 5-year plan. That was in December of 18. Starting in January, we had to do another special report to ACCJC. Then we had to do a 5-year integrated fiscal plan in December of that year. Then we had to do ACCJC read our reports, and they imposed probation, January 2020. Then we had to do a FITMAT report in March of 2020. Then we had to have a site visit and we had to prep for that. That was in January of 2021. Then we asked ACCJC to defer some action because we were going through a transition, and they did. That was in February, and we went before the board to present that. Then we had another follow-up report. That was in May with FitMat on the finance part of it in 2021. Then we had the review team come out in March, and we had to prepare for that. Then we had a visit from the site team, from the accreditation site team, and some of you may have been a part of that. And then after I got here, we got the civil grand jury, and they made some recommendations and they submitted a report. Then we had to do a report in May to the Chancellor's office on FitMat. And then we have to do a report that's coming up, that's due September the 21st on the grand jury. And then we have another report that's due, our ACCJC follow-up report that's due October 1st. And then we have another report that's due December 31st from FitMat. Now, just visually imagine how many people were involved in this. Some of you were involved in this. Imagine the number of hours it took to get these together. Imagine the resources that we could be using towards helping our district if we weren't always reporting on something that somebody said we aren't doing right. And I just wanted you to get a kind of a sense of that. I want to stop this. I think we have better things to do than submit reports telling people what we're going to do, but not having time to do what we said we were going to do because we're preparing for another report. I think we have some sympathy from the ACCJC. The presidents and I made a presentation to them in June. And honestly, I felt that we were looking into the abyss. And they decided to keep us on probation rather than moving to the next level of show cause, because when you go to show cause, you really are on a death spiral. And I don't want to see that happen to us. So when we got back, this is a calendar. Again, the presidents all have this, all of the ALOs have it and the vice presidents have it. And it is available for you on the webpage. We sat down and the first thing I did is say, we can't write this ourselves. Everybody is so busy running the college and the district. We need some help to help us write it. So I contacted an old friend of mine. You know, that's the good thing about having been in the system for 30 plus years. You get to make friends. And so I called on an old friend of mine, Jannett Jackson. She's out of Bakersfield, Kern Community College District. She's a faculty member and she's retired, and she has been doing this for different districts. And she also was on a site team that visited Peralta. So she knows who we are. She understands some of the challenges that we're going through, and she is helping us. And she is a taskmaster. So before we engaged her, the ALOs and I sat down with the presidents and the executive cabinet and came up with some timelines, working backwards from the last time that the board is going to meet before we have to submit this, and going back to August the 2nd. And you can see again how much time it's taking. The other thing that I want to point out to you is for August the 20th in red, where it says complete teach out plan. And this is something new. And I don't want people to be shocked when they see it and think that, oh my God, they're gonna, you know, not accredit us, that they're gonna put us on, you know, show cause. One of the things that happened at the June meeting with the commissioners is there was a mandate that came down from national that said that we needed to develop any college that is on probation has to do what they call a teach out plan. And that teach out plan says you need to look at all of your courses, all of your certificates, your AA degree, AS degree, all of those, and you have to identify if indeed you go to be dissolved, where would those students go so they can complete their educational requirements. So that's what this teach out plan is. And I want to commend the ALOs led by Vice Chancellor Siri Brown and working with Jannett. They are well on their way to completing this by next week or the end of this week. They said that they will complete this by the end of this week. So when you see it, don't be shocked. It's something that National has required of ACCJC, but it gives some credence to the severity of where we are in the accreditation process. Again, you see some of the deadlines. I won't go through all of those. I just wanted to point that out. We're looking at having a tentative draft by August the 30th. That's very aggressive. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the letter that we received because I want to put it in perspective of what we're addressing. So when we got the letter in June, there were 12 recommendations for College of Alameda and Merritt. Everybody knows that ACC accredits the colleges, not the district. There were 13 recommendations for BCC and for Laney. But of those recommendations, 12 of those recommendations were directed at the district. 10 of those recommendations were to meet the standard, and 2 of them were for improvement. So in effect, College of Alameda and Merritt received no recommendations, and the BCC and Laney only received 1 recommendation. So the thrust of our work is really to work on those 10 recommendations that we got that the district has to address. So I put this up here, not because I think we're failing. We have failed in some things. And I wanted to share this with you because when we met with the commission, it's in closed session. Some of you may or may not know that our board president is also on the commission, so she had to recuse herself. And we made this presentation, and one of the things that I said in that presentation, because I wanted them to know that we recognize the severity of where we are right now with the commission. And I said, failures are part of life. If you don't fail, you don't learn. If you don't learn, you'll never change. The thing is, we don't want to keep failing. We want to take those failures and make it so that we don't make those mistakes again, and we learn from those failures. Some of the best lessons that I've learned in my life is not by doing it right. It's when I've done it wrong. And then I said, okay, that was the lesson I was supposed to learn. So we know what that lesson is because we've been living it for the last 3 or 4 years. So here's the rest of the calendar. Again, the reason that we put this together is because we are going to have to share this with our shared governance constituency groups, but it's going to be fast and furious. So if you can't make, say that you're at BCC and they're going to talk about it on the September 1st and you can't make that meeting, then you can go the next day if you'd like, because they're going to be Zoom meetings, to Merritt's Academic Senate because they're going to be talking about it. Or you can go on the 7th to Laney's Faculty Senate meeting. So we want to give you every opportunity to look at it, to review it, because it's the district, it's all of us. If the district fails, the colleges fail. If the colleges fail, our faculty, our staff, and our administrators fail. And failure, as we say in my old military terms, failure is not an option. We are not going to fail. And then this is the last slide with the calendar, and you can see the board meets on September the 28th for their final approval. We package it all together and then get it over to the commission over in Novato. So that is what we're doing. The other report, like I said, I'll talk a little bit about, is the civil grand jury report. In that report, there were 9 findings. 4 of those findings had to do with hiring interference. 3 of those had to do with incivility, and 2 of those had to do with the Brown Act. That is why we're having the Brown Act training this afternoon. Well, this morning and this afternoon. And I wanted it to be something that wasn't dry. I didn't want it to be a legalese recitation of the different paragraphs within the Brown Act. I wanted you to be able to see how it came about, why it came about, and how we can use it to make sure that there is transparency and honesty. And some of the things that were alleged in the grand jury report, whether they happened or not, I'm not getting into a discussion. I wasn't here, so I can't say if it did or not. Or there's always two sides to every story, sometimes three sides. So, but I don't want us to make those same mistakes again. So if you are part of leadership, whether classified leadership or faculty leadership, or if you're an administrator that convenes meetings, please try to get to one of those sessions on. I think you will find it enlightening. I think you will find it something that you will gain something from. And on this slide, I'm not going to go through all of the things that were on the grand jury report. I do want to just read you in their executive summary what they said, because I think we need to inculcate how other people view us. And we are not like that, but by some of our actions, it tends to sometimes validate that. So I want us to change that. So the grand jury, and I just took this as an excerpt and I highlighted it because, you know, it's a lot of words. They said cohesion, civility, trust, and mutual respect are critical elements of an effective governing board of any kind of organization, not just the board. Tension, poor communication, lack of unified goals, and divisive individual behavior at Peralta have resulted in the board's inability to perform or to fulfill its mandate effectively. Interference in the traditional roles of the chancellor, secret meetings, and backroom dealing destroy staff morale and the board's relationship with the administrative team. Without reform or change in board behavior, Peralta students so in need of this essential institution will continue to suffer. The board has committed to change. I can say honestly, and we have not always agreed, but the board has not interfered with anything that I have tried to move forward since I've been here April 16th, 2021. And I believe that they are committed to make a change because of their love for this institution and for this community. So I want to just go through our return to campus. I know there's been a lot of questions about that, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if I cover something and you want more information, when we have our panel discussion, please ask our panelists and they will provide it. But I just want to provide a quick intro. So I went out to the webpage and I encourage you to do that. Please go to Safe Peralta. We put a lot of work into that. And some of the things that I got questions about are on that webpage. One of them is a document that we developed, you developed, I wasn't here, December 4th of 2020. And I'm just going to pull out a couple of excerpts from that document. As you can see, it shows some information about our buildings. We have over 2 million square feet of space in this district. It shows how many buildings we have at each of the campuses. It shows the total square feet, and we are trying to manage all of that. And sometimes the ball falls. We have, when this was developed, we had over 3,000 employees. Over a 3-year period, we had an average of 18,614 full-time equivalent students. And as we are doing now, we are staggering our reopening. So we are not doing anything new that we hadn't agreed that we would do back in December 2020. Okay, this isn't new, but you need to be aware of it. And it is out there, it was codified, and that's where it is. So in preparation for that, I just want to show you some of the signs, because to me, wayfaring signs are extremely important. And I hope this works. It worked for me the other day. There we go. I'm not going to go over all of the signs. I just want you to know when you see them that we knew, we planned for this, and kudos to Interim Vice Chancellor Etheria Smith. We also have help from HPLE, which is helping us, and Michael Terry is a partner there. Knowledge Saves Lives is working with us as we are trying to hire a public safety director and also marina security And we also have Ray and company that is helping us with the cleaning because we don't have enough staff to do it in the short truncated time. So you will see things like this. Access to the campus requires COVID screening. We do have the code, so you can put your phone there, take a picture, and it will take you to the websites. We want to make this easy. I know that Laney has about 3,400 students that are going to be here, hopefully, on Monday, and are having 170 sections. So that's going to be a biggest impact. We also have it for district employees. We also, say if you have any questions, go to a checkpoint. And then we have our Safe Peralta website. We also have the stop, do not enter. Thank you for your understanding. Due to social distancing, walk-in visitors are not allowed in this office, just in case people do get there and they try to go into an office. And then we want to put in a phone number or contact or email of where they can go. And then we have like a question and answer. So these signs will be going up on Friday. Again, I want to thank all of the people that are working with us, HPLE, DGS, Knowledge Saves Lives, Marina Security, and Ray for helping us with our cleaning. So let me continue. We will also have pictures so that you will know, again, this will be posted on the website of where the entry and the exit points are for each campus. I did not put up Berkeley because Berkeley, we have a central location right at the front door. For that, we identified the buildings over to the right, of which buildings are in phase 1. We're not opening up the entire campus. This is phase 1 of a 2-phased process. But we're focusing on the buildings, working with the presidents and the vice presidents of administrative services, our safety personnel, to put all of this together. And then we did the same for the other colleges. So just so you know, this is a presentation. I know that it's been done at Laney College with their safety committee. I'm not sure if it has at the other colleges, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I just want you to know that we have been planning for this. We haven't done it in a vacuum. But if you don't know, then you could assume that that is true because you'll say, well, I didn't know about it. So that's why I'm using this platform to kind of share with you some of the things that we've been working on. So we presented this to the presidents and the vice presidents, like I said, an expanded cabinet prior to meeting on ACCJC. So they are aware of this. I believe the presidents may even have a copy of it. And so we identified what DGS was responsible for. And we wanted to do this because one of the things in the ACCJC report is that there's blurring of responsibility. The colleges don't know what they're supposed to do. The district doesn't know what it's supposed to do. Sometimes there's overlapping or we're at cross ways with each other. So we wanted to make it clear what the district was doing and what's the college's responsibility. So the campus is in green, the district responsibilities, and then we identified what those activities were for the district. And here are the things, and you can see the wayfinding signage under item number 7 is something that the district is taking care of. And also establishing the checkpoints and issuing out masks if people don't have it and those types of things. The surface testing, the deep cleaning, all of those things that we're doing. And we will also share with you at a later date the assessment that was done by Forensic Analytics. So you can see why we had to take this action to have people come in to help us. I want people to see what was found when we did that assessment because we haven't been in the building for over a year, 18 months really for some areas, but some of the maintenance was longer than 18 months, and I want you to see what we're dealing with so that you understand why it's important. So engineering is looking at the HVAC, the water filters. Security is looking at the access points, monitoring the patrols, and the safety, the staff entry verification checkpoints. IT is working to make sure that we have WAPs, wireless access points, especially at Merritt, because the reception up there is not very good. Providing any technical support, putting computers out there for people that don't have applications on their phone or don't have phones. We're trying to facilitate this and make it as easy as possible, understanding that nobody's done this. Nobody's given us a blueprint. Nobody's done this before. So we're kind of figuring it out as we go. I ask for your patience. If you see something that you say, gosh, we could do this better, let us know. You know, we're flexible. We're not saying we have all the answers. And then here are what the campus reps are doing. We wanted to have a single point of contact so that if something comes up at the checkpoints, then, you know, the people that are security, they're not our employees, then they can contact one of us and say, you know, what do I do with this? And also they will help facilitate and smooth the transition as people try to get onto the campus. And then custodial services are under the auspices of each campus. So they'll be the ones that will do ongoing maintenance, and they will also make sure waste removal, trash cans, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of us need to participate in Zoom meetings if we have it, or we record it like we're doing now. So if you're not here, then you can see it at a later date. And then the other thing is to set up like a check. If you think something isn't done, go out to the webpage. Maybe we've already addressed it. And we are going to set up some FAQs on the webpage so we won't be getting the same questions over and over. And again, I encourage you to use Safer Peralta as a kind of a linchpin to our communication protocol. So return to campus, and I'm just, again, I don't want to beat this to death, but I do want you to know all the buildings that were prioritized for opening have been cleaned. And not only have they been cleaned, they've also been tested, and we have a thumbs up and a go. All campuses have security teams that will be patrolling, and that is 24/7. Kiosks are available at the 3 campuses, you know, and they will help students and employees with the campus shield, which is for students, and the company nurse, which is for employees, including student employees. Checkpoints are, the operational hours are from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. I know we have night classes, so we want to get there before classes start, and we also want to be there after the last class starts, that 7 to 10 class. They don't need to be there checking people after the class start, but they do. We will still have the security there, but we won't have the checkpoints open. Marina security will have patrol officers stationed at the building entrances, and they will review the access credentials. Like I said, company nurse for employees and campus shield for dependents. And Dr. Ron McKinley will talk more about that during the panel discussion. I want to quickly, I'm looking at my time, so I want to quickly go over the adopted budget. This is for fiscal year July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. We submitted in July a tentative budget that the board approved. So now what we've done is take what was recommended. There were some trailer bills that were out there. And so we've refined that a tentative budget for adopted budget. So here are some of the highlights of that budget. And again, I'm taking the 30,000 foot level, the budget book, and I know I saw a notice that the planning and budget meeting is already scheduled, I believe, for the 30th of this month. So that's where we can go into detail. But one of the highlights of the budget is that the state is going to fully pay off deferrals. They are supposed to do that, and think they have done that for July and August. There is a 5.707 cost of living adjustment. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. There was an extension of the hold harmless provision, or SCIF, and that was for an additional year to 2025. There was support for both part-time and full-time faculty. And again, I'll talk a little bit about that, and I'm sure Jennifer will go into more detail later on. And the part-time faculty, there was a question whether part-time faculty, we were going to get money to hire part-time faculty, but they said hire full-time faculty, and then they gave some money for part-time faculty office hours. Increased funding for guided pathways. They gave something for students in the form of reduced costs for textbooks, boost student recruitment and retention efforts, looking at dual enrollment, and also some funds for ESL. So some of you may have seen this document before. It went to the board for approval on May the 25th. I also presented it to the District Academic Senate at their last meeting. And this is just a recap for you of the recommendation that we made for hires for this coming year. And you can see I broke it out by district and by the colleges, so all 4 sites. I didn't go into all of the totals. You can see the percentage over here on the side of the totals for each of the faculty, classified professionals, and administrators. And then over here, I indicated by college which positions we were moving forward with. The only thing that we used as parameters was, one, we had to stay within the 50% law. Then we had to work within our budget projections. Like I told you, we had to do a 5-year integrated budget, which we did. And so we used that as a basis for making this decision, along with the parameter that the board policy is that we must maintain at least a 10% reserve. I wanted it to be a little more than 10% because we're in the process of doing a classification study. That classification study is looking at primarily our classified professionals and administrators, and looking and comparing that to what are the pay and benefits within our region. And I'm sure just anecdotally, there are going to be some recommendations for changes. And the worst thing we can do is to commission a report and then not have money to act upon those recommendations. So I want it to be a little more than 10%, which is what the minimum is that the board has provided guidance. The other thing is I wanted to make sure that the vacancies, a lot of these, especially in the classified professional ranks, are vacancies that just had not been filled. So I said, if there was a vacancy that had not been filled and there was a person in that position as of October of last year, which is when we submitted our 50% law, if we were in accordance with that law, then yes, you can move forward with hiring that person. If it's a new position, it is going to impact the 50% law. So let's take a look at it. And this is the result of that discussion. I want to thank the presidents. We talked about this openly, earnestly. They advocated for their colleges, I can tell you that. But I think we came up with something that is beneficial for the district as a whole, also for the colleges, but staying within the parameters that I just outlined over to the side. This is one of the things that came out of the budget at the state level, and then it went to the Board of Governors, and the Board of Governors and the State Chancellor's office parsed out those funds to each of the community college districts. I just took a snapshot of what was out there. So you can see what they did. They put out the district. They looked at what was our resident FTES. They looked at our full-time hires. And then over here to the side, they looked at what impact those dollars would have on the fund. And they used a basis of 86,771 as a salary level. But I will tell you that salary level does not include benefits. And when you add benefits to that, rule of thumb is benefits within our district, it's different at other districts, but within our districts is about 40%. So if you take that number, add 40% to it, you can see we will be well above the $1,378,984 that they are looking at giving us. So that's something that we will have to talk about and see where it lands. And again, that's the other reason that we didn't go out with all the hires at the beginning, because now we have some money and we might be able to make up that difference now. Negotiations. Again, I told you 5%, all bargaining units have approved that agreement. PFT was the first, and then SEIU and Local 39 will be going to the September board meeting. We agreed, SEIU agreed that we should all be on the same page. They were the outlier. Their contract was on an odd year from Local 39 and PFT. So we developed a bridge agreement. So now we will be negotiating with all of the bargaining units at the same time. I think that bodes better for SEIU, and I think they agreed with that. We negotiated with a side letter, the online course conversion using CARES funds, and also using CARES funds, the COVID impact stipend that was just approved by SEIU and Local 39, or if it hasn't been approved, we have a tentative agreement, and I think they're going to be asking their membership to approve that. $1,500 for those individuals that worked at home, because even working at home, you were impacted, we felt. And also, if you worked on campus, $3,000, and that also includes the $3,000 goes to those faculty members that worked on campus because they didn't convert their courses to the item up here, the online courses. I want to thank, these are the individuals that were on the negotiation teams. I've met with a lot of them. Some of them I haven't. On the PFT side, Jennifer and I have met for the first time, had a very, very good discussion. Rick Greenspan, I was surprised, Rick, if you're out there, that you were still here. I thought you had retired. So, you know, kudos for you for hanging in there. I've known Rick since I came here in 2004, and the same for Matt Goldstein. So I look forward to working with the PFT. I look forward to Local 39. I hired Selwyn, who is at College of Alameda. I worked with some of the others. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, I feel sometimes like it's coming home. SEIU, I know almost everybody on this list, not everybody, but a large number of them. So thank you for your welcome. Thank you for opening up your arms and bringing me back into the Peralta family. I really, really feel that I'm the lucky one, even though you're working me to death. I do feel like I'm the lucky one. So we talk about DEI, diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. And that's how you make me feel. I feel like I belong. So with that, I will entertain any questions. I think I have about Inger, you're my timekeeper. And how many minutes do I have for questions?
I would say at least 10 minutes. If things just really start rolling in and they're important, we could go right up to the hour and then take a quick break. So
okay. And Mark, I know you're helping with manage, you know, people raising their hands if there's any questions. I believe in transparency. Like I said, we may not always agree, but you may not like my answer, but I'll give you an answer.
Great. Well, we got a question from Kimberly King asking about the classroom ventilation systems.
Okay.
Have they been updated? Is there anything that you could comment on that?
We did go through and do an assessment, and I know particularly at BCC, when that building was built, we did not have the ability to open up the windows. And I know that IVC Smith has been looking at that and actually looking at purchasing some, I'm not sure what they call them, but they're the things that clear the air. And I will defer to her and Etheria if you could make sure you cover that when you go into the panel discussion. But yes, Kimberly, we did talk about that. We did take that into account, and that was part of that assessment.
I also wanted to remind everybody that the leadership panel, which will start in about 15 minutes, has our vice chancellors going through a lot of the logistics of the returning to campus, health and safety. And so you're welcome to ask Dr. J those questions as our chancellor, but some of those details you could save for the roundtable if you want.
Okay. Any other questions? Come on, you guys. I've never known Peralta to be shy.
So we have a question from Evelyn Lord. When will everyone be fully vaccinated?
Hi, Evelyn. Haven't seen you in years. I remember when you were the faculty representative of the Academic Senate and librarian, right? If I recall correctly. Anyway, remember what I said about people having different ideas and different opinions. There are some people who really feel strongly that they don't want to get vaccinated. And we try to provide a space for that, given that the district Board of Trustees has mandated that as a condition of employment, that you get vaccinated. So if you go to the webpage, Safe Peralta again, there is a COVID prevention plan. Look for the COVID prevention plan. And it's a draft plan. We've gotten tentative approval, I believe, from SEIU and also, no, not SEIU, from Local 39 and also PFT. And we still are waiting to meet with SEIU. But it is a draft, and that's why it says draft on there. But it has been approved by the board. The board has looked at it and is aware of it. And in that draft COVID prevention plan, it outlines exemptions. So that would be the first place I would check to see what the exemptions are. So an individual does not have to tell you what that exemption is. They may have an exemption that is between them, their healthcare provider, and then we document that only so that they will get a green on their company nurse application because they have that exemption. If you have an exemption, you may not, and I say may because it depends on the position, you may not be required to go to campus and conduct business face-to-face. Like anything else, we look at reasonable accommodations. And I'll let Ron get into the details of that, but there is no mandate that everybody get vaccinated. There is a mandate that if you choose not to get vaccinated, and I would strongly recommend that you do. I've been vaccinated. I had no repercussions, and now they're talking about doing a booster, and I'm probably going to do that. We all had to have a TB test before we came to work here. So this isn't, I see it as nothing new. But again, I'm not getting into the socio-political, dogma of why and big money and all of that. I know that the board has said that this is what we're supposed to do as a condition of employment, unless you meet those exemptions. If you don't meet those exemptions, then you must get tested every week. And we are trying to facilitate that so that you can get tested every week. But if you are on campus, and even if you are tested and you're on campus, you need to be masked at all times. So it's no different when you go to the grocery store. You don't go around asking people, are you tested? Are you tested? Are you tested? So we're trying to be flexible with that, but we also want people to know we want you to be safe. We want you to feel that we have taken every precaution that we can within the parameters of the law and within the recommendations by scientists that you get vaccinated. And that is what the board is saying. And so we are just trying to uphold that, but we are not going to go around and be the kind of the policeman, but you are going to have to show that you are vaccinated. If you are not vaccinated, then you're going to have to get tested every week. And you are going to have to wear a mask. And that goes for faculty, that goes for administrators, that goes for students, that goes for classified professionals. If you are on the property of the district, that is what the district has said. So I know that's not the, like, when are everybody going to do it? But, it says as a condition of employment. And if you feel that strongly, then, there's 10 other districts, 9 other districts, that you might want to look at moving over to if you feel that strongly, if it is that much of a held belief. But we do have a process where we can look at that and make that determination on a case-by-case basis.
Let me jump in here if it's okay, Dr. J.
Sure.
There's lots of questions in the Q&A about both the processes and the parameters for both students and employees. And I want to let everyone know that our next session, the Leadership Roundtable, our Vice Chancellor of HR, Dr. Ron McKinley, will be here talking more about it and can go into some more details. There's 2 sessions today about how the actual technology works. And so I don't want to minimize the need for information, but there is one question that perhaps you and Mark could answer, which is, Bill Trago says, can you share a little bit more about the plans to share out the information? So should people be watching mostly for your emails, Chancellor Jackson, or announcements from the PIO? The Safe Peralta website has lots of information, but what should people be keeping their eye out for in kind of as things change?
Dr. Jackson, you're on mute.
I remember I muted myself. I didn't want you to hear my little dogs barking in the background. So we're trying to take a multi-pronged approach, really. I'm encouraging that presidents, and I know I don't get everything that the presidents send out, but I will, commend Dr. Besikoff. He does send me his messages that he sends out. So you should be getting information from your presidents. Be on the lookout for that. I know that you should also be looking out for announcements from me, and we put it Chancellor's announcement. So, that I don't send out message just to say, hi, how you doing? That kind of stuff. I try to save those so that I don't bombard you with too much information. I try to pull it together and make it concise. So when you read it, then you're getting those bits and pieces. And I just sent one out yesterday, and it goes through a lot of the things that I think some of the questions are pointing at. Where do we go? What's out there? What is this? So I would say, go to your email. I know for some of you, you're coming back and you've got to wade through a mountain of emails. But if you look and just do a search on announcement or Chancellor's announcement, then you'll get all of the announcements that we've sent out since August the 5th. Remember that the board approved this on July 30th, and we already had a policy in place until July 31st, which was shelter in place, only essential people be on campus. So I would say to check that out. So the announcements is one way, through your own college organizational structure is another, and then the web page is the other. So whenever I do an announcement, Mark also posted on the splash page, prominently posted. I am so tired of looking at my face. You've got to come up with something else, Mark, by the way.
Noted.
Noted, right? So if you go to our splash page, it will have all of the things that we've sent out. And then if you click on that, it will take you over not only to the announcement, but usually embedded within the announcement is a link to Safe Peralta. And that is the other place that we're trying to put that. But absolutely, you can't hear it enough, because we're always, and things are happening so fast. Thank you guys for being flexible. Just think about it. We're only at August, 19th, and we've done all of this from July 31st, really, and that was on a weekend. So really, if you count the first day, August 2nd until now, that we've done a Herculean amount of work. And I want to thank everybody, because it has taken a village to get us here. It's not just me. Everybody is putting in long hours, long days, working on the weekends to make sure that when we do come back to campus, that we know that it is a safe campus in terms of our facilities, and that our staff and our faculty, for the most part, are being vaccinated so that we aren't carriers or transmitters of disease. And we're trying to facilitate that as much as we can. Our students especially, and I just have to say this, our students especially, I looked at the numbers. Our students, a lot of them do not do well online. They need that high touch. They need to know that people care about them. For somebody to have some deadlines, even though you may have it online, sometimes it's just the peer pressure of people saying, oh, did you get that? The homework is due next week, or have you guys want to get together for a study session? It's that incidental learning that we're missing. So we tried to do it during, the full shelter in place, but now we're moving forward. And so we want to make sure that our facilities are safe, and that our employees are safe also. A long answer, I know, but I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. This is coming from a place, and I do have to say this, I lost a brother younger than me to COVID, and he was not vaccinated. I'm vaccinated, and I'm older by 10 years than him. So it's a personal thing to me also. Okay, any more questions?
You know what I think we'll do, if it's okay with you, Dr. J, Chancellor Jackson. Most
Dr. J is fine, Inger.
Um, most of the questions are things that are going to be answered right at the top of the leadership. So we're going to start in a few minutes, and we're going to start with Vice Chancellor Dr. McKinley with HR and employee relations stuff, because he'll be able to answer a lot of the questions in the Q&A.
All right.
But before we make that switch, I just want to say, first of all, I'm very sorry for your loss. Many colleagues and students, as you know, also are experiencing very personal losses as a result of the pandemic and the illness, and losses that are one step removed from job loss and income loss and, you know, all kinds of things. So it is an extremely difficult moment.
It is.
And I want to thank you for giving the best attended live Chancellor session we've ever had today. At one point we had about 360 people. So people are really, really happy that you're here. They came to you know, learn and feel inspired by you. Thank you so much for coming and giving your time and kicking off our semester with such a meaningful and informative presentation. And welcome all over. If you look at the chats after you take a breath and don't sign out and look at the chats, you'll see unbelievable love and support for you and welcome back for you in the chat. So
I really do feel like I've come home. My life has been very circular. Thank you. I do feel like I am home. I do feel like this is the time and this is the place. I want to make sure that we are well on our way to recovery, that we take our, as my mom would say, claim your victory. For those of you that are of that ethnic background as I am, that would be one of the claim your victory. And so I am claiming our victory, that we are going to get through this, and we'll get through this together, and we'll be stronger because of it. And I think we've learned from that. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to working with each of you. And as we move back face to face, looking to meet you face to face also. And not just have coffee online virtually, but actually sitting down and having it. I miss those sessions, those come back to campus sessions where we usually had at Laney or at Merritt. And the fruit, the drink, the camaraderie. So thank you all. I appreciate that. And thank you for your welcome. And thank you, Inger, and thank you, Mark. And Donald, I see your picture up there also. So thank you. You kind of keep me in check, Donald, which is what you're supposed to do. All right. With that, I'm going to log off and turn off my mic. And I think we're going to take a little break and we'll come back, right?
Yes, let's, I'm afraid people will come in right at 10 and maybe people will join. So let's just take a quick 5-minute break so people can run and get another cup of tea. And then we'll start in 5 minutes at 10:05. And Dr. McKinley, if you're okay, we're going to let you go first. Siri has requested being bumped down on the schedule. So let's take Let's take a quick 5-minute break. Stay in this Zoom for the participants who are still here. You could go out. If you come back in, just use the same link, or you can just stay here and mute. I'm going to mute and stop my video and run and get another cup of tea, and we'll start in 5 minutes.